G'day everyone, you're listening to the BYC live from the Export Beer Garden Studios, where it's nice to be back after a small hiatus. Nice too to contemplate the return of the Black Caps back into action with a chance of redemption after the savage disappointments of the Chapel Hadley series. I'm joined as always by my two esteemed colleagues Paul Ford and Dylan Cleaver, and had the absolute pleasure of running into Dylan's brother in the beautiful Taranaki. Oh, what stories I heard, mostly about Dylan's propensity to change the rules in their epic backyard battles, and was told in no uncertain terms to watch out for Dylan's famous bent arm bowling action. And fellas, welcome back. It's been a little while. What a great man your brother is, Dylan.
Was he lubricated on the local Shining Peak?
No, he was quite sober, I must say. And he said actually that once you played a famous innings where I think you scored something in the vicinity of 2,500 runs without ever getting dismissed.
I think that's the prerogative of the older brother, isn't it?
Right, okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, he was a lovely man. We went and had a few brews afterwards. But g'day, Paul. How are you, mate?
I'm good. It sounds like Dylan's brother might have been on the truth serum rather than the beers.
Well,
it's great to get that level of detail.
Well, he was very adamant, I'll be honest with you, to watch out for Dylan's bent arm, which he called highly sceptical. So
I have been videoed.
We will be in the Dulux 11, Tradies 11, of course. I'll be looking out for that. I know Paul Ford will as well, mate.
Yep. So the head of the Taranaki Cricket Association umpires panel actually came to a game I was playing and set up the video specifically because there have been complaints about my action.
Oh, was it that bad?
Yeah, I passed with flying colours. He said, do not let anybody libel you from this day on.
Oh, right. And so your own brother's done it now.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll be having words.
All right, fellas, listen. Back into it. After the disappointment of the Chapel Hadley, this little tri-series, Bangladesh, Pakistan. I was saying to Dylan before the podcast, actually, Paul Ford, that maybe this is a perfect little opportunity here to have a bit of a tinker, have a bit of a play around. But he made the very relevant point, actually, that we're not far from the T20 World Cup and we've got limited sort of backup and sort of practice matches. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, that sounds like one of the worst ideas I've ever heard, is to start tinkering literally 2 weeks ahead of one of the most important World Cups for a year?
In my defence, what I'm saying is just like one bolter. Just try one bolter in each game. Come on.
Well, I reckon there are a few things to look for. And I guess specifically, will Adam Milne and Lockie Ferguson make it through a series uninjured?
No.
If one doesn't, then we might have to bring someone in. Yep. And two, there's a duel there, right? Well, there's a decision to be made. Who's going to open? Is it going to be Conway, and then we bring another middle order / all-rounder player in and kind of stack that middle order? Or do we play Allen and Guptill and then drop Conway down and lose one of those tonkers in the middle order? So there is a couple of points of intrigue, I think.
Look, we waxed lyrical in the last couple of podcasts, I think, Dylan, about, where is this side at the moment? We talked about, we feel like there's a need to change. We feel like things aren't going as they should. But we sort of also realise that depth that we've sort of waxed lyrical about so much over the last year, about this great depth of New Zealand cricket, we're suddenly going, actually, who are we actually going to bring in to replace these players? It seems to me that the New Zealand selectors, the New Zealand coaching panel has said, we're happy where we are. We're sticking with what we've got.
Yeah, and I think they've actually even come out, well, Paul will correct me if I've got this wrong, but I'm pretty sure Gary Stead said at the time of that squad naming that Finn Allen was the backup, that his opening pair is Conway, who will also wicket keep, and Guptill. Now, I mentioned that I think Guptill's probably getting to the point now where the leash has to be a bit shorter. I don't know if we can go through entire tournaments like the Cricket World Cup in 2019 waiting for him to fire. But his pedigree, I guess, does make him a fairly, you'd be hard pressed to leave him out of your squad anyway at this point, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing because let's be honest, Paul Ford, with regards to the Chapel Hadley series, we had them by the throat in 3 bloody games. The same in the English series. It's not like we were miles away from where we needed to be. We were the dominant force. just unable to sort of land the death blow. And I suppose when you think about it, there's a certain amount of sense in going, actually, this is the best squad we've got and we're sticking with it and backing it.
Yeah, look, I think as we talked about a few weeks ago, that is true, except that we keep getting ourselves into positions and we keep saying, oh, we nearly had them and, we were dominant and we just couldn't land the killer blow. And we did that in England and we did that in the West Indies. I'm not quite sure we can keep saying that we're really good, but we're just not quite good enough to win. I think when our team was at its absolute peak, we did pull off those 50-50 games. I think there's a huge amount of, but you're right, Jace. We want that redemption after the Australian series. No doubt about that. I think that there's a massive amount of reliance on the form, the status, the injury status, and the strike rate of Kane Williamson. If you look on paper at that squad that we had when we made the T20 World Cup final last time around, it's pretty much roughly the same team. And it was guys like Williamson that did super well at that tournament for us, Neesham and Mitchell, and obviously lovely Trenty, Tim Southey and Mitchell Santner. So I think we just need to do it again, and we need to do it in Australian conditions.
Yeah, good points, Paul. Good points, mate. And one of the curious things about this series, in many ways, Dylan Cleaver, because it had completely gone past my sort of consciousness, is the series itself. It's a bit of an odd one.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? We're playing, the wham bam, thank you, man, T20 cricket in the South Island in October, where lambs are dying in their thousands
because of the freezing cold.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, Pakistan have just come off a classic series against England, 7-match series, where they lost. They're under a bit of criticism because they're so heavily reliant on Mohammad Rizwan, who's a terrific player, and Babar Azam. But if those two fail, they've got nothing behind them. And Bangladesh, who feel like they're just puttering along, not doing a lot, but led by Shakib Al Hasan, who's always got something to prove.
Well, it'll just be good to see the boys back in action. But let's move on to our expectations, Paul Ford, regarding the World Cup coming up. It's a couple of weeks away now. Expectations and thoughts at this stage.
Yeah, I had a quick look at the odds, and Australia are top of the heap, followed by India and England. So I guess no surprises there. The three big dogs. New Zealand currently sort of down in the fifth favourite position with South Africa and Pakistan. So yeah, look, I guess we're going to have to overachieve again. In terms of expectations, I mean the Aussies always expect to win it. The Australians always expect to win it. I think England always expect to win it. So yeah, it's there's actually quite a lot of cricket to be played. For example, Australia's playing the West Indies and England in warm-up games. That's 5 T20s. But Pakistanis, as Dylan mentioned, have just come off that 7-match series that they lost 3-4 to England. Then they've got those games against Australia. And meanwhile, South Africa are playing India in some one-day internationals. So, look, I think a couple of the talking points is Ben Stokes is set to bat at number 4 for England. He's obviously their talisman. And Australia are trying to work out a way to wedge Cam Green in because he did extraordinarily well over in India, and it sort of buggered up their plans because he's not in their squad. And they've got Finch, who they're kind of babysitting and nursing through to retirement. And they've got Stoinis and Mitchell Marsh, who are both recovering from injury. So, look, I think the favourites of all are all in the mix, but there's not too much to be afraid of. There's a hell of a lot of players that are injured. I did a quick first 11, not quite 11, but Bairstow's injured, Hetmeyer didn't make the plane, Pereira from Sri Lanka's injured, Rassie van der Dussen is injured for South Africa, Stoinis, Jadeja fell off a balance board in the gym, Bumrah's injured and Archer's injured. So there's actually, some of these teams are not as strong as they could be.
And when you say Hetmeyer missed the plane, he literally missed the plane, didn't he?
Yeah. Oh, we've all been there. Good Lord. Hey, but I suppose in many respects, Dylan, there has been a little bit of doom and gloom. Well, there's been a lot, let's be honest, around the Black Caps of late with the England and Australian series and so forth. And yet there is a spark of optimism in me. I still think, actually, we have the team to win this tournament. So I reckon, despite the fact that, what Paul was saying there, we're down sort of 5th, 6th sort of rankings, we always tend to sort of respond in tournament play, don't we?
Well, we were 5th or 6th ranking, I think, at the last one,
Yes.
in the UAE.
And we got to the final.
We got to the final and probably got unlucky with the conditions there. Kane Williamson batted like a maestro, but then, what was it, Warner just took it away.
I want to talk about it.
But, optimism's a funny word, isn't it? I'm not feeling it at the moment. I may do as soon as they start and maybe get across the line in the first one. I might start feeling a little more optimistic. I'm a little like Paul, in that you can't just keep being unlucky.
Look, man, I'll put my hands up straight away and say, exactly, I'm with you guys on that. You know what I mean?
You get what you deserve.
Yes, well, that's right. And if you either win or you lose, and we lost, and that's it. And we got spanked in terms of those tournaments, both occasions. But I guess my optimism comes from, but we were dominating, and so we're not
bad cricketers.
We're not bad cricket. We're not a bad side. We have the ability to play well. And I don't know, Paul Ford. I just have this feeling about us in tournaments, and particularly the fact that we've come off a couple of really disappointing times recently, that the boys might be pretty fired up for this.
Yeah, look, and our T20 cricket hasn't been horrible. So, yeah, it's I think there's going to be a real clash of styles, because I think we're going to see the likes of India have come out, and they haven't used the word baseball, thank Christ, but they have talked about going hammer and tongs at the top of the order. The Pakistani batsmen that Dylan mentioned, Rizwan and Babar Azam, they've been criticised for not going hard enough at the top of the order.
Correct.
So a lot of these teams are going to absolutely redline it, and potentially that plays into our favour, because arguably you would say our bowling attack is what's won us a hell of a lot of games, and with Bolt, Southee, Santner, Sodhi, it's a pretty good quartet.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned India there, because in that respect, they're going to go hell for leather at the start there. They really froze in that last tournament, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they just didn't get going at all. So they're obviously determined this time to go, let's put the foot to the hammer straight away.
And what Paul mentions there is really interesting, and it's a conundrum for New Zealand, I think, because we're not a redlining team, and we try to outsmart. We have this little target in mind that we think is competitive. I think for New Zealand to be really a chance in this tournament, we have to almost always chase, because I've lost a little bit of faith in our target setting.
Yes, no, fair point. Well, it's going to be intriguing stuff, and obviously next week we'll get into it a little bit more as we get closer and the warm-up matches approach. Now, the White Ferns and the Windies, 3 low-scoring T20 bum clinches. New Zealand leads 2-1.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have been.
No.
I mean, the last one was reasonably comfortable. They were 4 for 20 or 3 for 11 or something.
What was it, chasing 95 or something?
Chasing 95.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got a partnership there, I think we did it with quite a few balls to spin. But the one before was bizarre when we're chasing just over 100. We're like 80 for 1 at one point, I think, and get home with 1 ball to spare. And the batting over there has just been dreadful. Very good. It's a very good spin. It's a spin bowler's paradise in the Windies for those limited overs games. But if I was playing the White Ferns at the moment, I wouldn't even pretend to play a seamer.
Yeah.
I'd just go 5 spinners, attack them with that, and look, some of the numbers in terms of the batting, eye-wateringly bad. Matty Green is the one. To sort of lead into that, the positive is we've been banging on for a long time about we need more contributions from people that aren't called Bates, Devine and Kerr.
Yes.
So we've got there. Matty Green's the top scorer, 130 runs, I believe. Not 140 runs, sorry. Not a hell of a lot of runs across what was 3 ODIs and now 3 T20s, but top scorer. Bates is next with 130 and Lauren Down next with 125. Sophie Devine's had a poor ODI and T20 series to date. Amelia Kerr hasn't done a heck of a lot. So I guess on the positive side, we are getting those contributions we've demanded from the other players. On the negative, it's just been a very ordinary batting display.
Well, but on that front, it wasn't dissimilar to the men's side over there, Paul. The pitches don't seem to be particularly conducive to flowing batsmanship.
I think that is absolutely bang on. I think the highest run scorer in the T20 so far scored 63 runs, and then the next best is 61. And I think there's only been 150, which I think it was Susie Bates, and she scored sort of 5 and 6 in the other innings. It's tough. It's about economy rates, and it's 3, 4, 5 runs and over. And yeah, as you say, Dylan, it is nice to see not just Matty Green, but also the likes of the left arm spinner Fran Jonas and also the offie Eden Carson, Hayley Jensen, some of those players getting a few wickets and doing a few good things, and as you say, maybe taking the pressure off some of the big dogs. Now it's time for the big dogs to step up in these last couple of games.
Great stuff. Hey boys, Mankadery.
Interesting, isn't it?
Mankadery.
It's interesting.
Is that a word?
Yeah, it is a word.
It is a word.
It is now.
It is now, yeah. Well, it's a great word.
Yeah.
Shakespearean.
You've moved into the realm of the adjective. No, was that a verb? If I got that wrong. But anyway, it's not just an act now, and you can decide for yourself whether you think it's a low act or a good tactic.
It's filth.
But it's actually kind of moved into this whole geopolitical issue about, the people in the subcontinent are throwing off the chains of colonial culture. And I've seen some really deeply written, angsty pieces about it, how, this is the English and the Australian trying to impose their cultural standards upon us. They didn't grow up like we grew up. And it's really a little bit weird, because to me it simply comes down to, do you think it's a valid mode of dismissal or not? And if you do think it's a valid mode of dismissal, do you think it's an ethical mode of dismissal or not?
Yeah.
But yeah, somehow it's mushroomed into this huge global culture war.
Well, I think, on the sort of law side of it, and particularly with the sort of prevalence of the T20s and all that sort of stuff, players scooting down the pitch, it's getting a bit fair cop, actually, if you're going to get stupid about it, particularly if the bowler's given you a warning, but not something personally I like to see that much of, Paul Ford.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a bit of an old people versus young people thing. I don't know. I think you're right. Like, the game has to evolve, and the fact is that the non-striker is going to take every single possible inch that they can, and that is going to get silly at times. And I think there has to be, in my opinion, a rule. Now, whether the rule settings are quite right, like, for example, you could penalise the batter if you could do a third umpire thing. You could have penalty runs. There's a bunch of different ways that you could actually regulate it. There is something weird about having a rule in cricket where the ball never gets bowled but you still lose a wicket. That seems kind of weird. And so, yeah, I think that I think that the behaviour of the non-striker going out of their crease has to be regulated, but I'm not sure whether, that sin is worth losing your wicket from straight away. It feels like it's a bit of a capital punishment, really.
It's the only time in cricket you can take a wicket, apart from being timed out, where there's absolutely zero skill factor involved at all. Like, even you can get a lot of fluke wickets by, being caught in the close in on the inside where it gets, trapped between the close in fielder's legs, or, there's a bunch of stuff where you can get lucky, but that to me is the only way you can be dismissed. Again, as I said, apart from being timed out, where there's no actual skill. And
well, you could argue that it was a lack of skill on the batsman's front.
No, and I do believe that the non-striker needs to be policed. I'm 100% on that, and you do have ridiculous instances of backing up. And in fact, I don't mind the man-cat in those situations. But when what's created this furore is the one with Deepti Sharma at the end of that one day against England, and like, you can see by the way her eyes are directed, she has gone in with the sole intention of pretending to bowl, waiting for, it was Charlie Dean on this occasion, to leave her crease and to take the wickets off. I'm never going to like that, and I don't care if it's an Indian, a Pakistani, a New Zealander, Australian. I don't care where you come from in the world. I am never ever going to buy into that kind of decision.
I find the culture war, but it's sort of, it feels like it's inflating it too much. That said, Charlie Dean did do it She was out of her crease. They did some statistical analysis, and she was out of her crease 70 times before they decided to dismiss her. Now, they didn't warn her, apparently. Well, maybe they did. Who knows? The argument about that as well. What I'm going to hate in kids cricket, when kids start trying to do it every ball, that's going to drive me crazy as a
stand-in
umpire of junior cricket.
Yeah.
Kids cricket is tough enough without that.
Waiting. Welcome back to the BYC, where we have a very, very special guest actually on the show today, and he had the absolute honour, of being the first featured guest in Dylan Cleaver's Obscure Players of the 90s. And that is Justin Paul, who joins us now. And first and foremost, Justin, welcome to the BYC, mate. I wonder how you feel about being described and being the first ever sort of featured person on Dylan Cleaver's Obscure Players of the 90s.
Well, I think he probably started with the most obscure, and he's probably working his way up the spectrum. So is that an honour? Let's go with that.
Yeah.
I reckon it is an honour, Justin. What they probably don't know is I had the pleasure of playing you, and you were far too good for me, at least at a match at Pukekura Park. But I was really fascinated to read your writings on your career and just how much cricket meant to you as a youngster. And I think that people forget that, don't they? That even the ones that don't make it to the very top just get so heavily invested in this game to the point where you wonder if it's unhealthy at times.
Absolutely. I think, as a teenager especially, if you're a little bit awkward, I think you're looking for any little bit of flotsam that you can hang on to and identify with. And cricket is a game that, it takes so much time and it swallows you. And, you become the cricket guy. And if you come from a small town like I did, and it becomes a large part of who you are.
One thing I was really fascinated by, and Justin wrote a beautiful essay for me for The Bounce, which I recommend everyone go on and read, is you described being put together in a flat with Mark Richardson in Dunedin as a disastrous move by Otago Cricket. Can you elaborate? A little bit on that?
Richie and I were both competing for the same spot, so this was back in his spin bowling days when he was the man, really. Left arm spinner, played for Auckland really young. And, a few wheels fell off that particular wagon. And, I also had some wobbly wheels, and they put us together. It was like some sick social experiment, to be honest. And we had the Taieri sort of mental hospital up the road, and I think at times we behaved like escapees, but so Richie would wake up in the middle of the night, have these eureka moments. I've got it, as spinners tended to do, and we'd be wheeled out first thing in the morning to try the new thing that had come to him in his sleep, and 5 minutes later he'd be swearing again. So here we were feeding off each other's insecurities.
Speaking of spin bowlers, Justin, I just want to get your inside word on this. Well, I was starting the podcast today. I bumped into Dylan's brother in the Taranaki there, and it was a very illuminating conversation I had with him. And he said to me to keep a real eye out on Dylan Cleaver's dodgy bent arm when he bowls the ball. Was that something you were cognizant of when you used to play against him?
I don't even remember that. Did I don't know if I even faced your bowling.
No, well, I don't think you got a bat at Pukekura Park, and the one other time we met was, unfortunately, you were carrying the drinks for Canterbury, which also became a little bit of a theme of your later career, didn't it?
Drink carrier, yeah.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to rub that in, but I am fascinated too by the connection between cricket and writing, because I believe that the sport of cricket, along with possibly baseball, has churned out some of the best literature. Do you think the kind of almost the neuroses that comes with playing cricket feeds very well into literature as well?
Great question, mate.
Yeah, that's a big question. I guess only from my perspective, Dylan, it's that probably, thinking about it too much. And it gives you a whole lot of time. If you don't do particularly well, it gives you a long time to think about how you've gone. I think, there's a lot of dwelling on things. And I had a really an interview with chat with Nashi, and he talked about there being two types of people who loved the game and people who were good at it. And when he said that, I went, oh, okay. I know which camp I'm in. But, I think there's a lot to that. I think, people read into it.
Well, just on that, that's really a really interesting point, actually, in terms of, cricketers, ex-cricketers being great writers and doing great writing. Because one of the things that I love about the game, and I was an extremely talented player, Justin. I just want to let you know on a personal level. But no, seriously, one of the things I loved, I loved fielding, and I wouldn't mind if I didn't touch the ball all day. But I just love the atmosphere and the sort of philosophical nature of the game. The tactics, the ins and outs, the intricacies. That's where my passion was.
Yep.
Which is lucky because it wouldn't have been in batting and bowling, would it?
Well, I was a skipper.
Worse than a fielder.
I was a skipper, I'll let you know.
Yeah, really terrific. There's a lot of drop catches out there, untouched by Jason Hoyte, I think is what he was confessing to there. I got a couple of questions from Wellington, Justin. First of all, God, I absolutely loved you, that opening line or early line where you talked about initiating people into cricket's fervent cult with its arcane codes and protocols. It's a beautiful line. And also a hat tip to Anton Chigurh getting mentioned from No Country for Old Men. I think you used it in reference to a silhouetted kid at a door. Some really beautiful words in there. My two questions. One was, the piece that was in The Bounce, which I know has appeared in a couple of other places, was to your son Ezra, and I guess I wondered what his feedback was, and did he write back? That's my first question. And then second was, I guess, to have you reflect on, you mentioned bowling to the touring West Indians when you were a young cricketer at Lords, and I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Wow, okay. Ezzy's 4. He hasn't given me any personal feedback, but no, I've had some really good feedback from people. I've got another son who's nearly 18, and he's already, he's trying to follow those footsteps, I guess. He's in the Canterbury underage teams, under-19s, and what have you. He's doing really well, but I'm just very aware, I guess, of those pitfalls that lie in wait for him. But, I think I said he plays with a lot more personality than I ever did. And the West Indians, that was an interesting time. Brian Lara, I think, was on that tour, and I think I bowled to him, but, didn't know who he was at that particular time. But we would be thrown into bowl because, we're at the MCC of the young cricketers and just bowling at them behalf of us. And one of the guys, I didn't put it in that particular piece, but one of the guys was quite quick. So he always used to bowl no balls, one of our young fellas. And he overstepped the line and was digging a few into the West Indians. And Viv Richards came up to him and he says, I can't do his accent, but you get behind that line, boy, or you're putting the pads on next. He bowled from a very long pitch for the rest of that piece.
Fantastic. Now, Justin, do you have time for 11 quick-fire questions?
I do.
All right, mate. I think Paul Ford starts us off.
Yeah, what's your go-to karaoke song?
I thought long and hard about this. Not a good singer, so I'm going for Add It Up by Violent Femmes. Bring people along and play some funky xylophone solos while I'm at it. Oh,
good on you, mate. Who was your
highly credible option?
Yeah, who is your favourite umpire / match official?
I'm going Steve Dunn, and I always felt he was a bowler's umpire, and he didn't say much, but I think he wanted me to do well, and I think he might have helped me out.
Okay, very easy question this. Your best cricketing moment?
I coached South Canterbury to their first Hawke Cup win. That was pretty cool. It was my wedding day. I wasn't actually there, so I was on the phone a lot of the time, but that's my ex-wife now, funnily enough.
Brilliant. Justin, what was your worst cricketing moment?
That is an easy one. 0 at Lords, my one and only appearance there. 2 balls, nearly got out first ball.
Wow.
Man.
Yep. Glorious.
God, I'd love a 0 at Lords. I feel bad saying that, but it's just honest. Who's the most promising player you've played with who never went on to play cricket at a higher level?
And no, don't say Cleaver.
I grew up in Timaru where a lot of good players actually, but I'm picking Greg Dejoux, he was actually a junior double All Black, and he had a younger brother, Ryan Dejoux, who played in Wellington, I think, later on, but he also was very talented. Great family.
What was the first proper cricket bat you ever owned?
I had a Mark Burgess, Dylan. It was
Nice.
sort of like
Mark
glazed.
Burgess.
Remember them in those days? They were glazed, and you could barely lift them.
Yeah, and they were kind of trying to copy the Gunnar Moore stylings, weren't they? They had the MB on them.
I don't think I've ever seen one of those.
Yeah, I
Lordy.
It was not a good bat. Neither was I, though. So we're a match made in heaven.
Well, hey, Justin, where's the best cricket lunch you've ever had?
There was a lady called Nancy, a fiery Irish lady who used to cook at Lord's, and Mike Gadding would attest to her meals. But I'm going for Molyneux Park in Alexandra. Classic. Beetroot salad, rolls of ham, jelly and ice cream, and maybe a bit of fruit salad.
Oh, so good, mate. Old schools, definitely.
Old school.
Hey, Justin, a European-styled lager or a New Zealand-made craft beer?
I'm a craft man, definitely.
Okay, good-o.
good man. Which of your former teammates would you have least liked to have to share a lockdown bubble with?
I think he's answered that, hasn't he?
Richie. Yeah, he'd be in there. I think Heath Davis has also got a bit of news recently. He would be a difficult man to beat in this one.
Oh, God. So agree with that. Who's the most famous person you've met outside of cricket?
Yeah, not many, but I do remember meeting Jerry Brownlee. He blocked a doorway, actually. And that's my meeting of him.
Okay, that's fair enough. Former Deputy Prime Minister.
Funnily enough, actually, on Jerry Brownlee, we were just talking the other day on the ACC, and we had him in the caravan at one stage, and we tried to get him to answer the question, where did he lose his virginity? And that turned into one of the most awkward sort of 5-minute spaces we ever did on ACC. And like a good politician, he didn't answer the question. He didn't answer it. And finally, Justin, what is your favourite shadow cricket batting shot?
Probably like you guys, I was a mimic in the day, and the Gordon Greenwich hook shot, lifting the front leg and the flourish of the bat, but I couldn't have been anything less like Gordon Greenwich in my own play. I think I call myself the anti-Piv in my writing.
Yes.
Hey, Justin, just before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit about the project you're working on in terms of the interviews you're doing?
Oh, sure. No, well, after I wrote that particular piece, a couple of other friends, or Gary Stead's an older friend of mine, and he said, try and get that story out of other people. And I made a team of people that I'd played with and against and met through cricket over the years, and reached out and interviewed, Richie, for example, Mark Richardson, Andy Flower, talking about living under Mugabe, just really interesting stuff. People looking back from their 50 really, looking back on their younger selves. Mark Butcher in the UK, John Crawley, talking to him. He was the most amazing batsman in underage. Adam Perori climbing Everest. Neil Maxwell, you probably know him. Yep. John Aiken, who's now married at first sight, Australia, some great guys catching up after 30 years and just talking about cricket and trying to get the same story out of them. What did it mean to them?
Okay, and you're after a publisher, I believe. So if there's anyone listening to this who knows a publisher or is a publisher themselves, get in touch.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Hey, Justin Paul, thank you so much for your time, mate. It's been an absolute delight, and all the best with the writing going forward. Thanks for joining the BYC.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, JP.
See ya.
Waiting. Hey.
That's right.
Let's move on now to a very popular segment, Paul Ford's News or Ruse.
You guys both got 2 points in the last one, so it's Cleaver on 10, Hoyte 4, Ford 4. So, here we go. Number 1, a sledge directed at female umpire Kim Cotton from former Indian star Yusuf Pathan led to a shoving match with Aussie bogan fast bowler Mitchell Johnson this week. Johnson and Pathan needed to be separated late in the first innings of their Legends League cricket qualifier on Sunday. Pathan was furious when Johnson's final ball of the third over was not deemed a wide and angrily confronted umpire Cotton and demanded an explanation. The duo exchanged words before Cotton managed to assist Johnson away. A huge supporter of chivalry, Johnson was apparently incensed that Pathan was sledging a female umpire. Johnson eventually dismissed Pathan, but not before he'd smashed him for 48 off 24 balls. Number 2. During the second T20 international between India and South Africa, there was a very peculiar interruption to the game when a snake slithered out onto the ground and stopped play for 5 minutes. It came out of a small pit to scare Wayne Parnell, who was fielding at extra cover, and then it slithered to backward point. Groundsmen rushed onto the ground to capture it in a bucket. The local Assam Cricket Association secretary, Devajit Saikia, thought it was actually quite hilarious. He might have been a man alone. In some places, he said, we see streakers or intruders from the stands, but here we have a different thing, and it is a snake. I'm sure the snake was also enjoying the match and wanted a closer look at the players. Fairly unique point of view from him. And number 3, Ryan Fox paid tribute to his former amateur golfing teammate Shane Warne after claiming a one-shot victory at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship. Fox finished second in last year's team event in Scotland alongside Warney, who died earlier this year. Fox made 7 birdies and 3 bogeys and picked up a lazy £763,000. He said, to be honest, the only person I can really think of at the moment is Warney. It means a lot, this event, and great mates, and it's just a shame that he's not here. I'm going to enjoy this one with the family. There we go.
Bless.
Great achievement by Ryan Fox, incidentally, by the way, boys. Brilliant stuff. Geez, he's done well. I didn't realise he'd done so well this year.
But was it by one shot, though?
Yeah, one shot. And he was shitting himself as he was coming down the final 3 holes. He said he played appallingly badly. But anyway.
There was on that as well. Last year when they played together, if you remember, there was a thing that happened quite soon after where Warne tweeted that India were the best cricket team in the world or whatever, and then Ryan Fox chimed back on Twitter and said, no, they didn't beat the Black Caps. And Ryan Fox was talking about how he got so much abuse for the next month or so. And this is what he said, I've come to realise the Indian cricket fans are absolutely crazy, so I will never do that again.
Yeah, well, we've had that experience too. I'm going story 3. I don't know that it was 7 birdies.
Okay. That's very specific. Can you just give me a quick rundown on the first one? The combatants there?
Mitchell Johnson and Yusuf Pathan.
Okay, because there's 2 Pathans.
Umpire Kim Cotton.
Okay, I'm going to go for story 1. And I'm going to say it was Irfan Pathan.
It actually points to me because you guys don't know your snake geography. They don't normally go from extra cover to backward point. They normally go from extra cover across to square leg. So, yeah, that's actually a point to me, boys. So, I'm took up to 5, Jace.
That's outrageous. All right.
Well, I'm trying to stick to the cricket stuff.
Hey,
come on.
Paul Ford's Violence Corner.
Paul Ford's Cricket Violence Corner.
Yes, it is. This week we're in the Atlantic Ocean in a sinking boat with the son of former England cricketer Gladstone Small, his kids, wife and dog. They were rescued from their sinking boat this week after it was hit by a whale in the Atlantic Ocean. Zachary Small was sailing back to the UK from the Azores, I think that's Portugal maybe, with his family when their boat was hit by a whale during the night. Massive gaping hole in the side of the catamaran. And then they found a large chunk of dark grey skin with a thick layer of pink blubbery flesh wedged in the hole. He battled alongside his partner and 2 daughters to keep the boat afloat, and they got rescued by a spotter plane and a gas tanker the next day. And they're all good. Thank God for that.
Beautiful. Hey, now listen, before we get into our correspondence, I've got an exciting announcement to make. Leader New Zealand is now the official caterer of the ACC. The exciting new ACC partnership starting this week and all through summer. Leaders New Zealand's lasagna Toppa is now the official caterer of the ACC. The iconic Kiwi snack is now stocked in the ACC commentary studio in our very own Toppa warmer. There for the team is a snack at innings breaks during live commentary. You'll be loving that, Paul. Thanks to our mates at Leader NZ for providing the endless lasagna Toppas. And on that, Toppa's is even sponsoring this segment.
Toppa Correspondence of the Week, brought to you by Leader NZ's Lasagna Toppa.
On the correspondence front, we got a message here from Simon P. Since we have had to listen to that wounding Mike Tyson ad on repeat on the BYC podcast ad breaks, perhaps the pod crew can discuss what format of cricket would best suit Iron Mike and what role would he play Dylan Cleaver?
Well, I've got him as a very dour, stodgy opening batsman, and the reason why is because he's a pigeon fancier, and he would opening the batting with the one and only William Morris Laurie, who is also a pigeon fancier and a stodgy top order bat. So
Paul Ford.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about that. I'm sure there's a story about Mike Tyson and Shane Warne as well, where he talked about being great mates with him, and then he was in a press conference, and they talked about sort of Shane Warne and how he got to know him or whatever, and Warne had died, and he asked if Shane Warne was still fighting. So it's just like, he really didn't quite know who he was, but, he's Mike Tyson. You can ask dumb stuff like that. I'm actually comparing him. I've done some research on this, and when Brendan McCullum retired, he was compared to Mike Tyson by an unidentified writer on CrickBuzz. Square-jawed, unblinking, soaked in sweat, taut, intimidating, and he has a look that says, I'm going to squash your face to jelly, and when you gulp down, you know he's heard it and sensed your fear. So Brendan McCullum equals Mike Tyson. Apparently.
Yeah. Nice. I would have him in the Malcolm Marshall kind of role.
Oh.
Yeah, sort of low to the ground, built like a brick shithouse, firing those skidders along the ground there. And can you imagine the stare down?
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine smashing Mike Tyson for 4 through the covers? What would happen?
Can you imagine umpiring him and not upholding one of his
Yeah,
appeals?
not giving him an LBW. Terrifying.
Or man-catting him.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, listen, everyone, thanks for taking the time to listen to this BYC podcast. Next week I'm going to be away, but I believe Mike Lane will be jumping in to take my place, and we'll be covering off as we get nearer and nearer to this T20 World Cup, fellas.
Well,
what do you say?
now you've said he's going to. He has to.
Well, that's why I said it, basically. Hey, but thanks for taking the time to listen to it, to the podcast. Don't forget to download and to, what's it called?
Get onto the bounce.
Oh, get onto the bounce, yes.
Yeah.
How's the bounce going, Dylan?
Yeah, it's really good. So obviously you've heard Justin today, so
yes.
Get on the bounce, scroll back to his essay, which was done in 2 parts. It's wonderful. Really
Beautiful stuff. And subscribe is what I meant. Good stuff. Thanks, everyone.